looking at the roots of our family is a very vulnerable thing because we are taught to love our parents. We are taught that your parents know best or love you so much. And yes, sure, they do. There also is a part where there are things that have happened in the home that affect you in ways that you don't like.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Tommy, it is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For the audience, I wonder if you can just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I am Kelly Yu. The Yu is short for Uchima. That is a Japanese last name. I am half Chinese, half Japanese. Currently, I'm living in LA, Los Angeles, California, as a full-time content creator. But before that, I was working in academia at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign as an academic researcher, studying childhood development. Very strange, very random. Don't know how I got there. And the reason is, growing up, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, because most of my life I was honestly just struggling with mental health, and we never talked about that. I didn't even know that I was struggling with my mental health. Obviously, as I grew up, I started to hear words like anxiety, eating disorders, depression, but my parents had no idea of how to deal with me. So I just built a lot of shame and fear and anxiety about my own anxiety. And when I was about 19, I started sharing my struggles and story online and built a really beautiful, wonderful community sharing my journey to eating disorder recovery, my first time going to therapy. And for years and years and years, I have basically documented a lot of that growth on social media. And I love talking about mental health, recovery, sobriety, and all things surrounding just a life journey and growing.
I'm wondering what made you think, typically you think of anxiety and it's a thing people try to like hide, or so I imagine. What made you reach out to social media and kind of, in such a speak on such a vulnerable thing with all your closest friends all over the internet?
Well, back then, social media was not popular. Instagram was still fairly new. So, in my mind, as a 19-year-old, I was like, no one's gonna know. This is completely anonymous. I'm just creating a profile. I barely even showed my face. It was back in the times where you could show photos of your food and write like a whole novel and people would actually read it. And I think that's what felt really safe to me at the time. And I didn't have people in my personal life, like my family. And I really honestly didn't have many friends because I struggled so much with social anxiety, my eating disorder things. I just really was on my phone, on my laptop, or at school or at work. And so being able to just word vomit in a way and finding people that would just find me and say, same, I feel this too. I'm struggling this way. Oh my gosh, I feel like you do. That was the biggest source of comfort. And so I think for me, it was way more comforting than fearful, honestly.
That's wonderful. And through your journey as a content creator, obviously you have a beautiful, flourishing community on social media. Are there any memorable challenges that you've faced through your journey on social media, and what insights have you gained?
I would say that I had a lot of moments in my life where I was too attached to these relationships that weren't really real in my personal physical life. When you find a really strong community that does share your struggles and have a very similar story to you, it often stopped me from pursuing those deep interpersonal relationships that every person needs, especially a teenager, a young adult, just any human being needs to create those physical bonds in real life. And social media is such a way for us to get so much validation and comfort and like verification as a person that I had to learn through therapy on how to start to manifest those real connections.
You mentioned that your family and upbringing has been a significant part of your journey. Do you want to share some information about that to the audience?
When I first started going to therapy, my first appointment, I set it up when I was 19 years old. I believe I was a junior in college. I went as a last resort. In my mind, I was going in because I was struggling so severely with my binge eating disorder. And if any of you don't really know what that is, I had a deep need to turn to food for comfort, and I would binge to the point of discomfort every single night. And I had so much shame with that, and I couldn't get out of the cycle. And so I went in, I said to the therapist, I just have this problem, help me fix it, it's all my fault. And she literally said to me, so how's your relationship with your parents, with your dad? And I was so I was so annoyed because I really looked at her and said, did you not hear me? Did you not hear what I came for? I don't know why we're talking about this. And at the time, I never dug deep into family dynamics or things. I accepted things as they were. I did know that my family had dysfunction and my dad wasn't really present, and my mom definitely let a lot of things slide, and I didn't love any of that. But I wasn't prepared at all or interested in facing the deeper things. Years later, I learned, oh my goodness, there are so many reasons why I have these struggles. And it's not just all my fault, but I can take it upon myself to face my past and face these things that I'm struggling with and see the roots of it. I think that looking at the roots of our family is a very vulnerable thing because we are taught to love our parents. We are taught that your parents know best or love you so much. And yes, sure they do. There also is a part where there are things that have happened in the home that affect you in ways that you don't like.
So I guess acknowledging that is maybe the first part of solving whatever issue it is for yourself. What was the second step of that for you?
When I started unearthing all these extremely uncomfortable truths and feelings with my therapist, I had to let it out at my family, and we had never been in that type of conversation and that dynamic, and I raged at my dad. So uncomfortable. My dad had never seen anyone stand up to him, and I really did become the black sheep of the family. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can relate to, you are the truth seeker in the home, in the family, therefore you are the problem child. And a lot of kids with eating disorders or anxiety and depression often are holding a lot of things in, and when they want to start pointing out things that are wrong, things that could be worked on, ways the family can reconnect in healthier ways, they become the toxic one, strangely enough, because we are stepping out of the bounds of that traditional family system that we are so used to. Like, it's going to be dysfunctional. We're just all going to walk around eggshells and dance around the problem. And I didn't talk to my dad for about 2 years, and I didn't talk to my mom for about a year, and my sister and I were quite distant for a while. And I had to stay very strong in my recovery with my relationship with myself and in my therapy journey, and trust the path that I was on with my therapist. And it felt so lonely. I mean, are you kidding me? It was terrible. I felt like I had no family, but I stayed really strong in that. And eventually we came back together, but I really kept my boundaries strong, and I won't let these things happen around me, and I won't talk about certain things, but I also will require them to have deeper conversations if they want to connect with me. But it's hard as a kid. You're just a kid after all, no matter how old you are.
You mentioned BetterHelp too. I feel like I had not really heard about BetterHelp until probably after COVID. Can you share a little bit about that company and what your relationship was there?
I only was able to start going to therapy when I was 19 because I was enrolled at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And after those initial counseling sessions at the campus counseling center, they were like, okay, great, we're going to connect you with a therapist because I think you definitely need some continued care. And I was like, well, how am I gonna afford that? I mean, there's just no way. I'm lucky I was still on my parents' insurance, but we did not have disposable income. Therapy is so expensive, and it is a necessity or need for so many of us, but it is so inaccessible. And the reason I do love websites that provide discounted, affordable online therapy is because people don't have cars, people don't have money, people don't have support, people don't have a ways to get to a real therapist. And a lot of people have to hide it from their parents, their partners, their families, their siblings. So a safe place to just hide in the closet on the phone, that I support that. Most of the time, it's just so much easier to open up when you feel safe. And if you are someone who has never talked to a random stranger about your problems, do you really think you're going to be able to let yourself open up as easily as maybe someone else? You know, we're lucky if we feel brave enough to do it. But if someone is super uncomfortable, they've spent $175 feeling very afraid in a stranger's room on a couch.
Right, right. And that, for sure, I could see that as an issue. And then even more, like if you don't have a good rapport with the therapist you had, uh, you've made a huge time commitment, huge financial commitment. Whereas I imagine on the app, it's as simple as, okay, I got along with this one, I'll sign up again, or I didn't, and I'd like a new one, and they probably recommend. Is that how it works?
Yes, and also, I am Asian and I've never had an Asian in person therapist, but on BetterHelp, or there's another one that I've tried for couples therapy actually called Regain, you can choose depending on the type of person you'd be comfortable with. And I think that's super important because there are differences between different backgrounds and different types of people where you feel safer or they might understand you a bit more compared to someone else. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The more points of connectivity for someone to understand you, I think, the better. I kind of want to hear, what are some past projects that you've really enjoyed working on?
So I started this thing every Thursday called the Therapy Thursday live show, and it was a Zoom meeting, and I would have an email list of all my followers who would sign up, and we would hang out for like an hour or 2 hours every Thursday evening. And it was like a structured show. Every week would have a topic. It was like how to have healthy relationships, how to talk to my family, how to start therapy, how to recover from binge eating, how to have a healthy relationship with movement. It was always something that was very connected with the struggles and the journeys of the people who mainly followed me. We'd talk about it, but we'd always have a fun game at the end, like a would you rather, or plan your dream trip when all this is over, or plan your favorite, slumber party night. We'd have a lot of different ways of connecting on that live, and everyone would be typing and answering questions and all these little games we'd have during the whole 1 to 2 hours. And so when the pandemic started to slowly evolve into people being able to do more things in real life, I was like, okay, well, as people are taking their walks outside or hanging out or going back to work, they could listen to a podcast where some of these topics will happen again. And it's been cool to have like friends and guests and people I admire on to talk about things because they're the experts.
Sure. No, absolutely. And it's what a productive way to spend the COVID quarantines. You started during like the peak lockdown period? Was that when it happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it was just a project. It was obviously completely free. I just wanted to connect, and I wanted people to feel like they had something to look forward to every Thursday, and it definitely was a lot of work. But it was cool because the whole concept of the show is lessons I've learned from therapy. And I've gone to therapy for 6 years, and I've changed my whole life from being the most miserable, suffering, eating disorder, codependent, abusive relationship girl to look at how I never thought there was going to be a way to change that. I really wanted my life to end. I had no interest in growing or moving forward. I never knew what I wanted to do as a job because, frankly, and to be totally honest, wasn't looking forward to a future. So sitting here now, doing this full time and being in a healthy relationship and living in LA, a place I never thought I could be, like, it is really wild to realize pursuing yourself can take you to so many places when you've been to the depths, like dark, dark, dark places.
I'm just wondering if there's any advice you'd like to leave your audience and ours and anyone who might be listening or watching to help them on their path and their journeys moving forward.
The strangest thing in life, in your journey, is that I feel when I was going through my struggles, it was so easy to talk to every single person, whether it was a stranger or a friend or a therapist, but I couldn't talk to my family. And that was the hardest thing to understand. These are the people that are closest to me, are supposed to be closest to me, that I love more than anyone in the world, and they say they love me more than anything. And I think the hardest work in life is to go to those most vulnerable places, which is the people closest to us can be the hardest people to open up to. And, you know, all of us have a family or a semblance of a family, people that we consider family, that we are very afraid of showing our true colors to sometimes. We are afraid that it might unearth something in them. They might feel uncomfortable, will feel uncomfortable. But taking that risk to have uncomfortable years, months, moments with these people, having moments where you have boundaries that you have to work on or might even have to separate to get closer one day, that risk is worth the reward of having the real relationship you want with someone. That real, authentic version of them will finally get to meet the real, authentic version of you. And I feel like once you can make that connection, you can truly be free to pursue yourself once you really untangle all those roots.
Wow. That's a really powerful statement that a lot of people need to hear. And Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show, being so vulnerable with us, and sharing your authentic self and a lot of your valuable lessons learned over an exciting but in some cases challenging journey with what looks like at least a happy ending to us. And so thank you so much for coming and chatting with us today. We really appreciate having you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Tommy, and thank you to Adventure TED Chats for having me. Bye.